In 1978, a 21-year-old bodybuilder who had never acted before went onto the set of The Incredible Hulk. He couldn't hear. He was scared. Bill Bixby took him under his wing. For a long time, many assumed they didn't work together very much. Lou Ferrigno, on the other hand, just said the truth. Bixby spent hours off camera training him how to behave, how to move, and how to feel. He kept the green makeup from getting on Lou's hearing aids. He even helped him get through 12-hour days that made a third of the crew sick or quit. But the actual narrative isn't about being famous. It's about loss, suffering, and a connection that changed both of their lives for good. People would murmur about what happened inside Grace Cathedral in San Francisco in 1947, when Bill Bixby was just 13 years old. For a long time, young Bill quietly got out a slingshot and aimed it at the bishop while clad in his robe during a choral service. He hit him. Right there in the service. This wasn't a mistake made by a child. He had planned it. He could never sing in the choir again. That little choir payment meant a lot to his family. Jane, his mother, worked at I. As a senior manager at Magnin & Company, they were striving to keep their family afloat following years of money problems. The scandal made her feel very bad and hurt their already weak reputation. But that moment also meant something bigger for Bill. He didn't care about authority. He would rather break the rules than stay quiet when something was wrong. That trend would stay with him for the rest of his life. Bill was 18 years old and about to be drafted into the Korean War in 1952. He was aware of the dangers. That war killed more than 36,000 Americans. He made a quick move instead of waiting for the army to grab him. He joined the Marine Corps Reserve. He was in VMA 141, which has a bad history. At Guadalcanal during World War II, 18 of its 41 officers were killed. As a private first class, Bill only made $95 a month. That was less than what he could make at a regular job. But being in the U.S. afforded him a chance to live and dream greater. Bill was in charge of personnel files at Naval Air Station Oakland, which was near to home, while other people his age were heading out to war. That choice might have saved his life and his job. This was so important to him because of something that happened when he was a kid. Bill was a child during the Great Depression. Wilfred Bixby, too, his father, worked as a store clerk and made $18 to $22 a week. That's approximately $350 to $400 now. His mom worked at I. Magnin paid a little more, about $35 to $40 a week. But it still wasn't enough. In 1942, when Bill was 8 years old, his father joined the Navy and went to the South Pacific. Jane was the only one who could take care of him. They moved into residences that were getting smaller and smaller. Bill regularly went to bed without eating. They depended on church food programs to survive. That's why the choir money was so important and why getting thrown out wounded more than just his dignity. Bill left UC Berkeley in 1956, just a few credits short of graduating. He was poor, but he was determined. He worked at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel for only $40 to $45 a week. He needed more money to survive on, so he also worked as a lifeguard at the hotel pool, where he made another $15 to $20. He worked 12 to 14 hours a day and slept in a little room nearby that cost $8 a week. He ate food that was left over from the hotel and used any extra money he had to pay for acting training. But the Roosevelt wasn't a random pick. It was a good choice. Stars like Clark Gable and Marilyn Monroe were drawn to its pool. One day, some advertising executives from Detroit saw him there and offered him a modeling position that paid $200 a week, which was 3 times what he made at the hotel. That moment made everything different. He bought a bus ticket to Detroit with his last $75 in 1959. He had been given a part in a theater play called The Boyfriend. The Detroit Civic Theater could only pay him $25 a week. There wasn't much money left for supper after paying his $20 rent. He lived on bread and beans and lost 18 pounds while the movie was being made. But that job provided him something much more significant than money. Talent scouts saw him. When he arrived back to LA, they offered him $300 a week. That small risk of $75 transformed into a whole career. He paid for acting training at the Estelle Harmon School of Acting with the $200 he made from the Detroit show. That's where an agent found him and signed him up. 2 years later, he earned his first professional TV gig on The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. He strolled into an interview in 1963 and announced, "Hi, I'm Bill Bixby." Jack Chertok, the producer, glanced at him and said, "No, you're not. You are Tim O'Hara." That got him the main part on My Favorite Martian, which was one of the top 10 shows on TV from 1966 to 1966. It came in 10th place during the 1963-64 season with a rating of 26.3, although the job was hard. This show filmed 5 full days a week, with up to 75 setups each day. Other shows only filmed 3 to 4 days a week. They didn't have time to practice, and as soon as one episode was done, they got the screenplay for the following one. It cost about $57,000 to make each episode. Bill became famous because of the job, but it also made him nervous. Would he ever be able to get rid of the picture of Tim O'Hara? He took little parts in movies, even ones that didn't give him credit, to break out. In Billy Wilder's Irma la Douce, which came out in 1963, he played a sailor with tattoos. Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine were also in the movie. The movie made $25.2 million, yet it was banned from TV for years because of its premise. He learned how huge studio sets worked and made connections with prominent directors, even if his part was modest. He was cast as James J. Jameson III in Clambake in 1967, opposite Elvis Presley. But things were crazy on set. Elvis had put on weight, slipped in the lavatory, and banged his head. The shoot was put off. Elvis was likewise unhappy, so he made another silly musical. His group provoked trouble every day, with pie fights, firecrackers, and water skirmishes. MGM has to send out warnings to keep the craziness in check. Bill, on the other hand, stayed professional. He respected him so much that he even borrowed one of Bill's favorite spoken word songs, "Softly as I Leave You," for his concerts years later. The movie still made it to Santa Carta 15 at the box office. Bill worked with Elvis again in 1968, this time in Speedway. He played Kenny Don Ford, a gambler whose addiction almost ruined his friend's career as a racer. It was the first big NASCAR movie, and it even had real racers like Richard Petty and Cale Yarborough in it. Elvis made $850,000 and got half of the earnings. Bill was a complicated, flawed, and emotional person. It was one of his best early movie roles. Bill was getting bored of merely acting at that point. In 1970, while Eddie's father was dating, he began directing. He played Tom Corbett, a widowed father raising his son Eddie, on the sitcom from 1969 to 1972. People were shocked by how well he and young actor Brandon Cruz got along emotionally. He directed 8 episodes in all, one of which was The Karate Story, which aired in January 1972. In 1971, he was nominated for an Emmy for that part. He was cautious, a perfectionist, and hands-on when he directed. He knew what he wanted and made sure everyone else did too. Bill made it happen, even though most lead performers weren't authorized to direct back then. He surprised people again in 1976. He played Willie Abbott in Rich Guy, Poor Man, a guy who was influenced by power and greed. This was a dark part, very different from how he usually acted as a father. The miniseries had an average of 34.9 million viewers each episode. He got another Emmy nomination for his performance. People were shocked to see him play a bad guy, but that's what made it so effective. The Magician, which came out in 1973, was one of his most startling parts. He played Anthony Blake, a real-life magician who solved crimes. What made it special was that every magic trick he did in front of the camera was real. There were no special effects or fake photography. He learned how to do sleight of hand, mentalism, and escape tricks from magician Mark Wilson. The show has 22 episodes and taught people how to practice magic the hard way. He kept giving orders. He directed episodes of Manic, including A Ransom for Yesterday in 1975, which came out on February 9th. It was about a ransom of $250,000, which is now worth $1.4 million. That show had an average of 3.2 deaths each episode, making it one of the most violent shows on TV. Bill's directing was less about the violence and more on how it made people feel after it happened. He did 4 episodes in total, including one named Courage and Hardball. This showed that he could handle severe crime stories and still make them feel real. Bill Bixby made a bold request at CBS meetings in November 1977. He assured them that the Hulk program wasn't going to be a frivolous kids' show. He stated it would be true drama, not just fun. He didn't like jokes that were bright or looked like cartoons. He wanted to demonstrate how much anguish, loneliness, and difficulty he was going through. The producers didn't trust him at first. They thought it would be like Batman from the 1960s. But when the pilot came out on November 4, 1977, it stunned everyone. There were dark shadows and sorrowful piano music that made it look like a scary movie. Bixby played Dr. David Banner like a real man who was guilty. That pilot was the most popular TV movie on CBS that year. Bixby made his point exactly like that. The whole series spanned from March 10, 1978, to May 12, 1982, and there were 80 episodes in all. It was hard work behind the scenes. Lou Ferrigno, who played the Hulk, had to sit through 3.5 to 4 hours of makeup every day. He sat for 20 hours straight on the pilot. He still had to act in full costume for 12 to 14 hours after getting his makeup done. He couldn't even get the paint off easily. They had to put up a special shower on his trailer, and 2 helpers would wash his back. They worked only 3 hard days some weeks. Sometimes they worked 7 days in a row without a break. His green makeup made his skin break out. The things on his face felt like jelly clinging to his skin. The cosmetics team changed a few times. It was hard. But Bixby wasn't simply acting during all of this. He also began to direct episodes. He directed the 2-part story, the first in 1981. It became one of the most dramatic stories in the series. That year, something happened that would change Bixby for good. He was on a ski trip with his 6-year-old son Christopher at Mammoth Lakes on March 4, 1981. The boy's throat infection came on all of a sudden. While Christopher waited, the doctor was busy taking a splinter out of another patient's finger at the hospital. It was too late by the time they tried to put in a breathing tube. Christopher's heart stopped beating, and he died. Bixby subsequently stated, "My son suffocated while the doctor was taking a splinter out of another doctor's finger." That defeat broke him. He said he was so angry for 2 years that he couldn't think straight. On April 7, 1982, just over a year later, Christopher's mother, actress Brenda Benet, killed herself. She was just 36 years old. She lighted candles, lay down in the bathroom, and shot herself with a .38 revolver. The year prior, Bixby and Benet had gotten a divorce. Friends stated she had been in a lot of pain since their son died. She had also broken up with someone just 2 weeks previously. It was too much. In just 13 months, Bixby lost both his child and his ex-wife. He worked hard to stay alive. He began directing episodes of Mr. Merlin in late 1981. The first one aired on October 14, 1981, and was called The Cloning of the Green. The show only had 22 episodes and ended in March 1982, but Bixby directed many of them even though he was in pain. People who were there stated he was always kind and nice, even while he was in pain. Directing was how he stayed alive. He had already started to feel the yearning for connection and family when he worked on The Courtship of Eddie's Father from 1969 to 1972. Brandon Cruz, the youngster who played Eddie, didn't have a stable family. Bixby took care of him. They became quite close off screen. Bixby said that Cruz was like family to him. He said, "I didn't know I had that part of me until after the show." Brandon did it. Bixby needed Cruz even more after his kid died in 1981. Years later, Cruz named his child after Bixby to honor their lifetime friendship. Bixby made another startling connection on The Incredible Hulk with Lou Ferrigno. Ferrigno was only 21 when he participated, making him the youngest Mr. Piecer in history and the first to win the Universe title. But he had never acted before. Bixby taught him with care. Bixby would discreetly show Ferrigno how to display emotion over long night shoots. As time went on, Ferrigno started to think of Bixby as a father figure. Ferrigno claimed that even decades later, the episodes that Bixby directed remained his favorites. That friendship helped Ferrigno become a great actor. Bixby came back as David Banner in the TV movie The Incredible Hulk Returns in 1988. This time, it wasn't on CBS. It was on NBC. And it brought in something new, Marvel's Thor. Bixby came up with that. He wanted to link the Hulk to a larger world. The network, on the other hand, wanted less drama and more action. Bixby fought back. He made sure that the melancholy piano music and deep voice stayed in the movie. Ferrigno had to work out a lot again, and in 3 months he gained 45 pounds to become the Hulk again. The movie came out on May 22, 1988. It laid the groundwork for future Hulk ventures while staying true to Bixby's vision. He was a great director, and in 1977 he was even nominated for a Directors Guild of America award for an episode of Rich Man, Poor Man, Book 2. That was surprising because the first author hadn't even published a second book yet. Bixby had to work things out as he went along. That episode, Chapter 3, was different from the others and helped influence the future of miniseries TV. Some of his projects didn't work. He directed a pilot for a third MASH spin-off named Walter in 1984. It was only shown once, on July 17, 1984. And it never aired on the West Coast because the Democratic National Convention got in the way. The story was too sad. Radar O'Reilly lost his property, got divorced on his honeymoon, and then became a cop who wanted to kill himself. People who didn't like it said it was unwatchable. Someone even claimed they would rather watch Walter Mondale's speech. Bixby also worked on a show called Dreams that same year. It was ahead of its time. It has stereo sound in music video genres. John Stamos and Janie Gertz were in it. Bixby directed the pilot episode of Kiss Me Red and an episode that never aired called Suspicions. The show was only on from October 3 until October 31, 1984. There were only 5 episodes, but Heart Song alone became a success in 1987. The show was over, but the music lived on. Bixby was in charge of 8 episodes of the sitcom Sledgehammer from 1987 to 1988. It was a spoof of Dirty Harry, with silly jokes and way too much violence. In one episode, Bixby even made a brief appearance as a prisoner who yelled, "I'm free! I'm free," as the wrong door opened. It was weird, funny, and demonstrated how versatile Bixby is. Bixby got married again in December 1990, this time to Laura Michaels. It seemed like a new beginning, but it didn't endure. He was diagnosed with prostate cancer in 1991. She left him just a few months after they got married. In June 1992, their divorce was official. That was the meanest part. He had finally let his guard down, and now he was fighting cancer on his own. His friends felt he was at his lowest. He had no family, no wife, and cancer was growing through his bones. Bill Bixby found that he had prostate cancer in April 1991. It was the kind of news that would make anyone stop in their tracks. But not him. He didn't stop. He kept going to work, directing episodes of the popular NBC program Blossom. He nonetheless walked onto the scene in 1992, even though he was in a lot of agony and the cancer had spread to his bones, bladder, and liver. He directed an episode named Getting Lucky on November 20, 1992. The next day, he went to UCLA Medical Center for an experimental treatment with a medication called Suramine. He used tablets and 4 drugs 5 to 6 times a day to attempt to deal with the pain that never went away. But he never allowed the cast or crew see him grumble. They were astonished not only because he was dying while working, but also because he still wanted to get every shot right. NBC showed a TV movie named The Death of the Incredible Hulk 2 years earlier, in February 1990. Bixby not only played Dr. David Banner one last time, but he also directed the whole movie. Banner was hiding out in Portland, where he pretended to be a mentally challenged janitor named David Bellamy. He was looking for a way to get better, but in the end, Banner perished in a plane crash. It seemed too genuine and too close. They had already developed a scenario for a sequel called The Revenge of the Incredible Hulk, in which Banner would come back to life with the Hulk's body and Banner's intellect. They never got to do it. When Bixby's cancer got worse, everything came to a halt. In January 1992, CBS showed Diagnosis of Murder, in which Bixby played a suspect in a murder. After more than 30 years in the business, this was his last movie role. He was also going through quite strong chemotherapy at the time, but he still gave one of his best performances. He shot it in Vancouver, which is also where he made his last Hulk movie. No one could believe how smart he still was. The movie also has Marriott Hartley in it. They had worked together in the past. Everyone present was deeply affected by seeing Bixby go through it all. Bill Bixby died at the age of 59 in his Century City home on November 21, 1993. Cancer has been eating away at his body for 3 years. But even then, physicians claimed he lasted over 2 years longer than they thought he would. His death took more than just a life. It closed the door on a Hulk sequel that many had been looking forward to. The screenplay for The Incredible Hulk's Revenge has already been written in July 1990. But there was no flag without Bixby. Hundreds of people from the industry attended to his funeral. They didn't only think of him as an actor. They remembered a man who came back again and over again, was always nice, and gave everything he had every day. Bixby never stopped helping people, even when he was in suffering. He taught young actors and crew members one at a time. People say he went into your mind to figure out what was wrong before providing you suggestions. And he achieved all of this while taking a lot of painkillers, going through frequent treatments, and yet smiling. Brandon Cruz, who played Bixby's co-star in the movie The Courtship of Eddie's Father, noted that Bixby never talked down to anyone. Even when he was dying, he treated everyone the same. Bixby has also been through experiences that most people would never be able to get past. His 6-year-old son Christopher died abruptly on a ski trip in 1981. Brenda Bennett, his ex-wife, killed herself the next year. She couldn't stand losing their son, but Bixby kept working. He utilized work to get away. People who worked with him stated he didn't just keep going. He kept helping other people even though he was in a lot of pain. Even filming The Incredible Hulk pushed him to his limits, which is more than most actors would be willing to do. He spent 2 hours getting ready for the transformation scenes, during which he had to wear excruciating hard contact lenses that had to be taken off every 15 minutes. Ferrigno, who played the Hulk, had to put on green makeup for 3 to 4 hours every day. In the first episode, which aired in 1977, Ferrigno wore makeup for 20 hours straight. The green paint started rubbing off on everything, which damaged the kids' outfits on stage. But Bixby never got angry. He kept everyone calm, no matter how bad things became. There was even a 4 a.m. A coyote snatched Lou Ferrigno's breakfast on the day of filming. He had a huge omelet with 12 eggs on it outside his trailer. And in the middle of that cold early morning shot, the coyote took it. Bixby didn't freak out. He changed the timetable, joked about it, and moved on. It became a part of the story. The Hulk is angry because he didn't eat breakfast. A lot of people don't know that Bixby trained Ferrigno himself. Ferrigno had never acted in a movie before. And it was considerably worse because he couldn't hear well. Bixby spent hours off camera helping him with his lines, his placement, and even how to read emotions through movement. Bixby made sure that makeup professionals never got green paint near Ferrigno's ears because he wore hearing aids. Ferrigno remarked that Bixby was like a dad to him. He even watched Bixby's old shows to learn how to act. Cary Grant came to the site one day solely to meet the Hulk. Bixby made sure that Ferrigno got his picture. He was always there for others, making sure they had everything they needed. But the timetable for filming The Incredible Hulk was a nightmare. They didn't have their own sound stage. They were always changing where they were. By the 4th season, a third of the crew had left or gotten sick. Days lasted from 12 to 14 hours. Ferrigno would work till 2 a.m. at times. But Bixby never missed a day, never fell apart, and never broke. He was still able to keep it all together even while directing Blossom just 5 days before he died. Bixby and Ferrigno didn't have a lot of time on screen together, but they did have a great relationship. Before the change sequences, Bixby would act out how Banner felt so that Ferrigno could match the feelings without saying anything. He was both instructing him and doing his own performance. That's why it was so sad when the Incredible Hulk died. You could sense the pain coming from both Banner and Bixby. NBC planned more movies after they saw how well that one fared. The next one would have brought Banner back to life, but cancer put an end to everything. Bixby helmed his last episode of Blossom just 6 days before he died. Ferrigno claims that Bixby taught him more than just how to act. He taught him about life, fame, work, and respect. And when Bixby left, the planned Hulk comeback also went away. It didn't feel right without him.